How far should a man go to ensure the safety of those he loves? Should he go as far as betraying his country, willingly giving away secrets to a foreign power? What if that man actually knew very little about the person they loved? French embassy employee Bertrand Boursicot had no doubts about the correct answers to these questions. At the height of China's Cultural Revolution, he cooperated with Mao's security services in exchange for the safety of the woman he loved, Shi Pei, and their son. I'm your host David, and today we are looking at a tale of friendship spanning ideological rivalries, which later became a love story and eventually ended in scandal. This is the Cold War.
Father's Day is coming up, and sometimes picking out just the right gift can be really tough. Does Dad really need another tie after all? That's why I am so glad to be working with today's sponsor, Ridge, whose modernized everyday accessories will be available at up to 40% off through June 15th as part of their Father's Day sale. You just can't go wrong with the classic Ridge wallet, a sleek and rugged upgrade to classic wallet design. It's built with military-grade materials for lifelong durability, and with over 30 different colors and styles to choose from, you'll be able to find one that best suits Dad's personality and style. The wallet also blocks RFID signals to fight digital thieves and comes with a lifetime guarantee. But if your father has a massive bundle of keys, like so many dads out there is the Ridge key case. The key case is a quiet and easy way to hold up to 6 keys in your pocket without any hassle, and just feels cooler than untangling key rings as you go about your day. The wallets in the key case come with a 90-day return policy, so if your recipient doesn't like them, you can return them risk-free. And best of all, there's a load of other stuff included in the Father's Day sale too, so you're sure to find the perfect gift when you visit ridge.com/TCW. Save up to 40% before June 15th and see why Ridge has over 50,000 5-star reviews. That's ridge.com/TCW.
In January of 1964, French President Charles de Gaulle formally recognized Mao's communist government in China. In February, France became the first Western power to open an embassy in Beijing following the Korean War. The French delegation was joined by a freshly hired accountant, Bertrand Boursicot, a 20-year-old from Brittany who brought with him a thirst for adventure, but little knowledge of the world at large. For several months, Bertrand struggled to forge any significant social bonds. He did not fit well into the diplomatic milieu, and the locals were wary of mingling with foreigners, likely the result of being actively discouraged by security forces. By December 1964, Boursicot was desperate for human contact. After limited same-sex experiences at boarding school, the young accountant was now dating a British secretary, but wasn't really interested in her. The two attended a party hosted by a French diplomat, during which Bertrand was intrigued by a 26-year-old Chinese man who appeared to be the center of attention. The man introduced himself as Shi Pei, a Chinese language teacher, playwright, librettist, and former opera singer. Bertrand and Pei hit it off almost immediately, with the latter acting as the former's guide, helping him to discover the hidden sights of Beijing and the intricacies of Chinese culture. One evening, Pei told Bertrand about an opera in which he had performed called The Story of the Butterfly. This romantic tragedy deals with a girl who disguises themselves as a male to attend an imperial school. One of her schoolmates falls in love with him before realizing she is her. Unfortunately, the girl is forced into an arranged marriage, which leads her lover to commit suicide. The girl also kills herself, and the two lovers' souls turn into butterflies, flying away together. At first, Boursicot did not grasp the significance of this story, but it would soon become clear. In March 1965, Boursicot was invited to join an expedition in Brazil, an adventure he had been dreaming about for years. When Bertrand told his friend that he would soon leave, Shi invited him home and told him again the story of the butterfly, but with a different conclusion. "Look at my hands, look at my face. That story of the butterfly, it is my story too." It was time for Pei to reveal the truth. He had been born a Shi, the third of 3 daughters. But her mother had feared she may be rejected by her husband's extremely traditional family if she did not give birth to a male. Hence, Mrs. Shi disguised her gender at birth and raised Shi as a boy. Pei Pu and her parents had maintained the ruse into her adult years. Her explanation was that in Mao's China, it was dangerous to admit that a family had followed such ancient and patriarchal values. Boursicot promised to keep Pei Pu's secret, and in his mind made plans to bring her to safety to help her move out of China. At the same time, he made other plans to take their relationship to another level. He and Pei Pu had to consummate their relationship, which they did. Not frequently, but often enough in the following weeks, months, years of their relationship. But Boursicot always described it as a strange, awkward experience. Nonetheless, after some weeks, Pei Pu announced that she was pregnant. But fearing the consequences of having a child with a foreigner, she performed a home abortion. At the end of 1965, Boursicot was due to leave China for Brazil. On the eve of his departure, Pei Pu informed him that she was pregnant again, but this time she would keep the baby. Bernard promised he would return to China, and he did, returning to Beijing in 1970, this time as an archivist with the French embassy. At this time, the country was in the throes of Mao's Cultural Revolution, in which the vestiges of capitalism and nationalism were being violently purged from Chinese society. Millions of alleged counter-revolutionaries and enemies of the state were hunted down by the Ministry of Public Security, the MPS, Mao's Internal Intelligence and Security Service. Hundreds of thousands were interred in the Laogai labor camps or simply executed. It was a dangerous time for a foreigner to venture alone in Beijing, asking too many questions, but that's what Bernard did, looking for Pei Pu and their child. Boursicot eventually tracked her down in a large apartment complex, but their son, Shi Pei, also known as Bertrand, was present only in photos. The reunion was interrupted when a group of neighbors and 3 policemen burst into Shi's apartment, loudly accusing Boursicot of being a foreign spy. The archivist handled the situation perfectly, introducing himself as a friend of Comrade Shi and an admirer of the Cultural Revolution. His friend had been, in fact, teaching him about Chairman Mao's great achievements. Following the scare, Bernard and Pei Pu kept at a distance until she received permission from her superior, an official at the Writers' Association, that the two could meet twice a week to study the doctrine of Mao. During their study sessions, Pei Pu revealed that their son was born on August 12, 1966. His features were partly European, which could have made him a target during the early stages of the Cultural Revolution. Hence, Pei Pu had sent baby Bertrand away from Beijing to live near the Soviet border. After 2 months of private lessons, Pei Pu informed Boursicot that she would no longer teach him. They could still meet at her apartment, but the lessons would be delivered by a government official, a man who introduced himself simply as Kang. And this is where accounts of the affair begin to get complicated. According to Boursicot's own retelling, Kang was a low-level police officer. Boursicot took a liking to him and proactively volunteered to help the Cultural Revolution and the Chinese people as a whole by stealing classified documents from the French embassy. But, according to FBI agent T. Van Megers, Kang was in fact a high-ranking agent within the MPS. And it was Kang who offered Boursicot 2 choices. He could cooperate by spying on the French, or be declared persona non grata. He would be expelled, and the MPS would arrest Shi Pei. There is also speculation as to Kang's real identity. According to French journalist Roger Faligot and Remy Kaufer, Boursicot's handler was actually Yu Zhensan, head of the MPS's Foreign Affairs Bureau. Intriguingly, Yu's biological father was Yu Chi-wei, first husband of Jin Qiang, who would later marry Chairman Mao himself. And to make matters even more intriguing, Yu Zhensan would later be adopted by Kang Sheng, an early Chinese spy master known as Mao's Beria. Finally, it's not clear whether Shi Pei had been part of a larger MPS scheme since her first encounter with Boursicot. According to author Todd Hoffman, Shi was very likely a public security informant, otherwise she would not have been able to attend diplomatic events. But her encounter and later seduction of Boursicot had not been planned, and Officer Kang's later intervention was likely an improvisation. Regardless of whatever backstory you choose to believe, Kang did not ask Boursicot to hand over any strategic secrets about France, which was seen as a largely friendly nation. Instead, Bertrand was asked to provide any information about US and Soviet policies which might be handled at the embassy. At the time, Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger were planning a rapprochement with Mao. They had discussed the plan with French President de Gaulle, who presumably had informed his ambassador in China, Etienne Monash. Kang was also interested in diplomatic cables dispatched from the French embassy in Moscow to the one in Beijing. Since the Sino-Soviet split, China had recalled its own diplomatic legation and was in dire need of intelligence about, in Kang's own words, the revisionism of the USSR. Boursicot was able to deliver on both assignments. As an archivist, he had easy access to the embassy mailroom. From there, he selected documents of interest, tucked them under his shirt, and handed them to Kang at Peipu's apartment. After the files were copied, Boursicot returned them to the archives. In this way, Boursicot may have handled anywhere between 150 and 500 classified documents to the MPS. All the while, the French spy found time to continue his relationship with Peipu, although sex continued to be infrequent and awkward, especially with Kang and Shu's mother hovering outside the bedroom. In the spring of 1972, Boursicot's posting with the embassy terminated, and he had to leave China. In November of 1973, he again returned, but this time not as a diplomat, but on a simple tourist visa. And he was in for a surprise. The oppressive political climate of the Cultural Revolution had relaxed somewhat, which had allowed Peipu to bring back their son to Beijing. On the 15th of November, Boursicot first met his son, Bertrand. The reunion was short-lived as Boursicot's visa only lasted a few weeks. Nonetheless, he managed to meet with his handler, and now friend, Officer Kang, during which he asked him to protect little Bertrand. Over the next 4 years, Bertrand and Peipu had little, if any, contact. He returned to France, rejoined the Foreign Service, and moved to New Orleans with his new partner, Thierry. Eventually, Bertrand had to confess to him about the existence of Peipu and Bertrand and his desire to bring them to France one day. The occasion to see them again came in early 1977 when the French embassy in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, posted a job opening for an archivist. Boursicot was hired and in April made a quick visit to Beijing before moving to his new post. After seeing Peipu, Bertrand sat down with his friend Kang to talk business. At the time, the Soviet armed forces had 20 divisions deployed in Mongolia, as well as a further 35,000 technical advisors. Boursicot was to report on their activities and troop movements. Once again, Boursicot promised to help in exchange for protection for Bertrand. The French spy returned to Ulaanbaatar, where he grabbed any possible piece of info he could lay his hands on. Then, every 6 weeks, he traveled to Beijing on courier duty. While there, he could spend up to 36 hours without raising suspicion, despite his reassurances to Thierry that the love story between him and Peipu was over. Bertrand continued having a physical relationship with her, usually with his eyes covered. He would then hand over his smuggled documents to Kang, documents which usually turned out to be rather underwhelming. They included diplomatic cables about the weird fashion choices of Mongolian Communist Party cadres, who apparently had a thing for Al Capone-style fedora hats, or dispatches complaining about the heavily mutton-based Mongolian diet. What they didn't contain information on was Soviet troop movements. After 16 months of this routine, Kang asked Boursicot to please stop stealing documents, a rare case of a handler asking his asset not to spy. The intelligence was worthless, but stealing it was a risk nonetheless. Shortly afterwards, Bertrand was recalled to Paris, and from there he was assigned to a new post in Belize. But eventually, Boursicot found a simple and brilliant way to get Peipu and Bertrand out of China. Since Shi Pei was a playwright and performer with a certain level of fame, why not have her invited by the French Ministry of Culture for a series of lectures? The plan worked. Peipu and Bertrand arrived in Paris on October 9, 1982, on a 3-month cultural visa. It should be noted that Peipu still dressed and introduced herself as a man. In fact, Boursicot introduced the now 15-year-old Bertrand as his son and Shi as his uncle. Quickly, Uncle Peipu became the toast of Paris. Thanks to her traditional Beijing opera performances, her visa was extended to 1 year. I should clarify here that Pei Pu mainly performed in female roles. In a dizzying game of identities, the singer was born a girl who acted as a man in real life but performed as a woman on stage. Monsieur Shu, as she was known, attracted the attention of a particular crowd, the DST, France's internal security agency. French agents took notice that a Chinese national was living with an employee of the Foreign Office and started investigating their backgrounds. On the morning of June 30th, 1983, an unsuspecting Bernard Boursicot was tackled by two agents of the DST on a Parisian street and was taken in for questioning. The following day, he was charged with espionage, while two DST inspectors went to speak to Monsieur Shu, who confessed to actually being Madame Shu and to be the mother of Boursicot's son. On July the 7th, Shu was arrested too on charges of espionage, which she denied. The following week, prosecuting judge Bruno Laroche ordered a medical examination of Pei Pu. The doctors in charge found out that the girl, who had been living disguised as a man but performed as a woman, was in fact a man. Pei Pu had been born a male and had never undergone any gender reassignment surgery. He had been lying to Boursicot for almost 18 years. He had been able to perpetuate the ruse thanks to his ambiguous appearance, Boursicot's sexual inexperience, and to a rare physical talent. Pei Pu was able to tuck his genitals into his body cavity, giving the illusion of having female reproductive organs. An illusion which allowed him to have infrequent, awkward intercourse, preferably in the dark or with his lover's eyes blindfolded. In the words of author Joyce Wadler, Bernard Boursicot had fallen in love with a shadow. Until January 1984, Laroche had kept Boursicot and Shu in custody, interrogating them separately. But at the end of the month, he questioned them together. Boursicot, still in shock at the revelation, could not believe that Pei Pu was a man until he saw the truth with his own eyes. Boursicot asked, "But why didn't you tell me?" To which Pei Pu replied, "There was never any time." But Shu had another surprise. Shu Dudu, aka Bertrand, was not his son. Well, clearly. But he was Boursicot's child, somehow conceived via artificial insemination. In June, blood tests confirmed that Dudu was related to neither Pei Pu nor Bertrand. The baby boy had been adopted by the Shu family from impoverished parents in the Xinjiang province. According to French newspaper Libération, the boy may have been provided by the MPS as part of a ploy to secure Boursicot's cooperation. Regardless, this last revelation was too much for Boursicot. He attempted suicide in prison with a razor blade, but was saved before he could complete the act. In May 1986, the trial of Bernard Boursicot and Shi Pei took place. Boursicot's lawyer argued that the documents he smuggled to Kang were of trivial importance. In his words, "This case is absolutely at the bottom of the ladder in the spying world." The jury begged to disagree, sentencing Boursicot and Shu to 6 years each. But less than a year later, in April 1987, French President François Mitterrand issued a pardon for Monsieur Shu to avoid endangering relations with China. Boursicot was pardoned 4 months later. In the years that followed, the two former lovers had only occasional contact. Shi Pei died on June 30th, 2009. Weeks before his death, he had told Bernard that he still loved him, but Boursicot had felt used and betrayed. Upon Shi's death, he declared, "I think it is stupid to play another game now and say I am sad. The plate is clean now. I am free." We hope you've enjoyed this tale of friendship, of love, and of espionage. Please check out the play based on this story, M. Butterfly, by David Henry Wang, and its movie adaptation by David Cronenberg. To make sure you don't miss any other videos, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and carry on a clandestine long-distance and super awkward romantic relationship with the bell button. Please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thecoldwar or through YouTube membership. We can be reached via email at thecoldwarchannel@gmail.com. This is the Cold War Channel, and as we think about the Cold War, please remember that history is shades of gray and rarely black and white.